Martin Luther King Jr. once said, "An individual has not started living until he can rise above the narrow confines of his individualistic concerns to the broader concerns of all humanity." Diversity is an important aspect of life, especially in the time that we're in right now, because it shapes us into being better students and it gives us more points of view and understandings of other cultures. Pepperdine has a lack of diversity, and one way that we can change this is to start a petition to send to the administration here at Pepperdine and request that we start a student-led organization that goes to different areas in LA and tell them about our financial aid opportunities here and also help them begin applying for these things. On any given day when you walk to the CAF, how much diversity are you going to see? Here's some statistics to give you a better idea, taken from the Department of Admissions for the class of 2020 here at Pepperdine, and a study of ethnic distribution of America by the Kaiser Family Foundation in 2015. As you can see, over 48% of the incoming freshman class at Pepperdine is white, whereas 61% in the nation is white. Again, 15% Hispanic or Latino, and 18% in the nation. 11% Asian, and 6% in the nation. 7% international students, 11% international students, and 7 in the nation. 5% Black or African American, and 12% in the nation. And lastly, 6% multiracial, and 2% in the nation. Some of these numbers may not seem that far off, but it should be Pepperdine's goal to accurately replicate these numbers that we see in America here at school. Leah Taylor, freshman here at Pepperdine, is an international student from Jamaica. And when I asked her how it felt for her to walk onto a campus that's majority white, she said at first she was shocked because she's never felt that type of isolation before. And something interesting she said was she feels like people try and overcompensate for the fact that we don't have diversity because like everybody knows that it's not a secret. And so they try too hard to kind of make up for it, which just draws more attention to it and makes it a lot more awkward. It's important to remember that when I'm talking about diversity, I'm not just talking about race. Webster's dictionary defines diversity as the condition of having or being composed of different elements. So in this case, I'm talking about both race and economic class. According to rankings based on economic diversity on the website Best Colleges, Pepperdine is just one of the many Southern California universities that lack in diversity. Let's think about some of the practical benefits of diversity. Let's say you grew up in a white family off the coast of Southern California, and you grew up with people who were just like you, also white, middle to upper class, you attended the same private schools, and all of your families believed in the same things. And then you come to Pepperdine, and you see basically the same thing with just a tad more diversity. Then you go to leave Pepperdine and get a job in whatever field you want. For example, I want to be a social worker, so for the sake of the illustration, let's say you go to be a social worker. So you get a job in said field, and now you're exposed to all these things that you've never seen before, like abuse and poverty and disability, and you're the minority in a very culturally diverse society. How are you going to know how to handle that? You've grown up in this cultural bubble, and you've never been exposed to these types of things. We've talked briefly in this class about the roles of education in society, and I believe that one of the main roles is to educate students and train them in the skills that they may need, whatever those may be, to be successful in life. Pepperdine has its goals in regards to diversity listed on their website as the following. Create a gender-balanced faculty as well as ethnically diverse. Increase recruitment from underrepresented groups. Create a campus climate of inclusion, and participate in and learn from urban communities in LA. W. David Bard, former dean of Pepperdine, told the LA Times in an interview the following. We are concerned about ethnic diversity, not necessarily because it's politically correct, but because it's the right thing to do. We're called to it as a consequence of our mission commitment. Pepperdine prides itself on preparing its students to go and be successful in the workforce, but how are we going to be successful when what we see here is not reality? Or let's put it this way. Of all the people that you're going to meet in your life, is it realistic that 50% of them are going to be white and only 5% of them are going to be Black or African American? That's just not realistic. Exposure to different diverse groups of people is crucial, and Pepperdine lacks this exposure. But the question is why? So in order to understand why, it's important to understand the federal Pell Grant. The federal Pell Grant website describes the federal Pell Grant saying that it's unlike a loan in that it doesn't have to be repaid and it's typically given to undergraduate students. This is based on the paperwork that I'm sure most of us have cried over, the FAFSA, or the Free Application for Federal Student Aid. According to the U.S. News World Report of College Rankings in 2016, Pepperdine is ranked 215 out of 294, which means compared to most national universities, Pepperdine does not admit very many low-income students. According to this report, experts say that the Pell Grant is the best way to gauge the amount of low-income students that are being admitted on a given campus. So clearly we can see that we have the funds, but the problem is that we have a lack of applicants. So that brings us to the root of the problem, the lack of applicants. Dr. Robin Perrin, sociology professor here at Pepperdine, used to work in admissions. And when I asked him his opinion on why we have a lack of applicants, he said that he believes it's because college isn't on students in low-income areas' radar. So there's two reasons for this. One being they assume that they have no chance of coming here because of their minority status, and also they just haven't been exposed to the idea of college enough. For example, I grew up in Gaithersburg, Maryland, and it's a small suburb of Washington, D.C. And generally, Gaithersburg is a low-income area, and most people can only afford to go to community college. So when I told people I was coming to Pepperdine, their first reaction was, "What is Pepperdine?" So when I told them what Pepperdine was, and I told them where it was, their first reaction was that I'm only coming here because I'm white and rich, which is not the case. The reason I'm telling you about my hometown is because it's just one example of many low-income areas that Pepperdine has not exposed its financial aid options to. So let's look at what we have so far. Pepperdine has a lack of diversity. Diversity is important to shaping students. The reason we have a lack of diversity is because we have a lack of applicants. And the lack of applicants is due to a lack of exposure on Pepperdine's part of its financial aid options. Pepperdine should make more of an effort to increase diversity on campus. And one way that the students can take charge is by starting a petition and giving it to the administration and asking for a student-led organization that goes to different parts of LA and first of all tells them about our financial aid opportunities, but also helps them begin the process of applying because a lot of times it's overwhelming and people don't even know where to start. There would be multiple benefits to the students being proactive, and one of them is that we would be making relationships with people who are not like us, which, as I said before, it shapes us as students. But it would also be exposing them to the opportunities that we've been given. Diversity is not only important to us as students, but it's important to the minorities that we have here on campus and making them feel included, as well as welcoming other minorities onto campus. Pepperdine lacks in diversity, and the students can be proactive by starting this petition and getting more involved in the LA area. Andrew K. Benton, president of Pepperdine University since the year 2000, wrote the following message on the Pepperdine website on diversity. Our faith also confirms that we are finite, therefore our knowledge is incomplete. It is through the inclusion and experiences of others from diverse points of view that we often begin to see dimensions of truth previously unseen by us. Pepperdine views diversity as one facet of the prism of values formed by our mission.